to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we're gonna do another dinosaur video. Now last time we did a baby stego and you guys really enjoyed that, so today we're gonna do a baby carno. Also, in that previous video I did notice that you guys wanted to see a baby spino being done, so I'm gonna add that to my list of things to do. Anyways, let's get started. Okay guys, so the first thing I'm gonna work on is going to be the sewing for the carno's body. So here is the pattern that I'm going to use to make the carno, and it's actually quite simple, and in fact you could probably use this to make a bunch of different dinosaurs. I mean, as long as it walks on two legs, this pattern would pretty much work for it. You may have to alter it just a tiny bit. In fact, this pattern is the same type of pattern that I use to make my raptor plushes. The only thing different is I changed the size of the front arm piece. I made it a lot smaller because carnos have a lot smaller front arms. So we're going to use our pattern to cut all of our fabric out, and the fabric I wanted to use for this is kind of a minky fabric, so it's really soft and a little bit stretchy, so I'm going to use my sewing machine to sew it. So when I'm cutting everything out, I'm going to leave a 1/4 of an inch or a little bit more around all of the pattern pieces. That way I can use the sewing machine. So you're going to need your side pieces, you're going to need a left and a right, you're going to need your belly piece, and then the inside parts of the legs. So the first sewing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the legs first. So I'm going to take the inside parts of the legs and I'm going to pin them to the other parts of the legs that are on the main body. I'm going to pin them together, and then I'm going to use my sewing machine to go down the front and the back of each one. After that, we need to sew the belly piece on. So I'm going to use my sewing machine to sew the neck part. I'm then going to skip the arm part and go directly to where the belly part is between the two legs. I'm then going to skip sewing the back leg and then continue sewing the rest of the belly on. The parts where the legs are, I'm going to hand sew. And then once you have the belly piece on, you just need to continue sewing down the rest of the tail. The last bit of sewing that you'll need to do is going right down the back of the dinosaur. And then once you're done with the sewing, you're going to flip everything right side out. Now I'm going to wait on stuffing it until when we put the clay pieces on, but you're welcome to stuff it now. I just find it a lot easier to do this while I'm putting everything together. So now that the sewing is done, we're going to move on to the clay pieces. So I'm going to start on the head first, mainly because I didn't want to wait. I really wanted to make the head, and I just didn't want to work on the legs right now. I wanted to start on the face. So I'm going to start with a lump of tin foil for this. You're going to shape it into a rough idea of what the shape of the head is going to be. For the carno, it's going to be kind of a triangle with one of the sides rounded, which will be the top of the head. Now I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to completely cover this in a nice thick layer of clay. Once you have it covered, we can start deciding where all the details are going to go. Now if you watch a lot of my videos, you know that I like to normally put my eyes on first, but I found that the shape of the head needed to be finished, so we're going to add the horns first and then we're going to add the eyes. So I'm not really going to do anything like add wires to these, mainly because they're really short, so they don't need the extra support. So I'm just going to put some cones on the very top of the head and then just start blending them into the face. After that, I'm going to decide where the eyes are going to go, and then I'm going to put some clay balls into the place of the eyes. And then I'm going to use some strips of clay to start making the eyelids and shaping everything. Funny thing about this piece is I actually had ordered a pair of glass eyes for it, but I had forgot that I had them, and I had started sculpting the eyes without even thinking about it. So by the time I had finished the eyes, I realized I had glass eyes I was supposed to use, and I just kind of gave up the idea of using them, so I'm going to save those for a future project, and I'm just going to stick with the clay eyes because they came out pretty cute. Moving on, we're going to work on the mouth now. So I'm going to take a strip of clay and I'm going to make the upper lip of the mouth. I'm just laying a strip of clay on the face, making sure it's nice and even, and then I'm going to blend it into one side of the face. That's going to be the side that the lip is technically for. I'm going to use my tools to kind of straighten everything out, and then we're probably going to move on to adding some teeth to the face. Making the teeth is actually super simple. All I did was I rolled out a bunch of tiny little balls, and then I kind of pinched and twisted them until there were tiny little cones. And then I just placed them on the face where I wanted them and used my tools to kind of blend everything together. Now I'm really happy with the shape of the face, so I'm going to move on to adding the details to the top of the face. So I'm going to add some balls of clay to make some scales, and then I'm going to use my tools to kind of carve in different types of scales as I'm going. That way it's not all little balls of clay, that I can kind of make them angled or different shapes. I actually found that I really like using the back end of these cheap little paintbrushes to make scale texture, so I just kind of push them in over and over and over again, kind of overlaying and everything, and I got a really cool texture to it. It works a lot more than like a rounded tool. A rounded tool would give you kind of softer scales, and this was kind of rough and had a seam, so it made them a lot more jaggedy looking. Anyways, once I got all the extra scale detail added to the face, I'm going to call this piece done. I'm going to put this in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45 to 55 minutes. And now I'm going to move on to making the clay feet. For the clay feet, I made some very simple little wire frames, and I'm going to start building my clay on top of these. So the larger frame is for the back feet, and then the smaller frame is for the itty bitty little arms that we're going to make. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of clay and I'm going to put it on the end of each wire piece that we have. Each wire piece is representing a toe or a finger, so the end of it is going to be a claw. So I'm just going to put the clay at the end, and then I'm going to start sculpting it until I like the shape of the claw. The little fingers I'm not going to make sharp or anything because they're really not used for fighting or anything, so I'm just going to kind of have them a little rounded. Now the main difference between making the face and making the feet is I'm going to be baking my clay multiple times. That way it's easier to work with. With all these fingers and everything, it's kind of hard to not bump anything. So I'm going to be actually baking the claws first for probably like 20 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. And then once those are out of the oven, we can start working on the bottom of the hands and the bottom of the feet. So the bottom of the hands are super simple. I'm just adding some strips of clay and I'm pushing them onto the wires for each finger, making sure to go all the way down to the bottom where the two connect. I'm then going to blend everything in, and then I'm going to use my tools to kind of add some wrinkles and stuff to make it look like the fingers can kind of bend a little bit, because if you don't add the wrinkles to it, it just kind of looks like a stick. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do the same thing to the back legs. The back legs are going to get a lot more detail, of course, because they're a lot bigger and they have more toes and everything. So I'm going to try and make it shaped a bit more like a toe pad, but it's going to still be more like a reptile foot. And then of course the same thing that I did with the front hands, we're going to use on the feet and use our tools to make different types of textures and stuff to make them look wrinkly and a little bit more realistic. And then once I was done with this, I'm going to put these in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit again for probably about 30 minutes this time. And then once those are out of the oven, we can work on the tops of the hands and the tops of the feet. So for the tops of the hands and feet, I want to add a lot more texture, and I want to make the scales kind of jaggedy looking, so I'm going to try and layer them. So basically I rolled out a ton of tiny little clay balls, and I'm just going to lay them onto the toes. As I'm going, I'm going to use my tools to kind of blend them together and point them out a bit, and kind of separate them so it looks like they're layered. And then I'm going to start making larger and larger clay pieces. That way it looks like the scales are getting larger and larger as they go up the foot. And then again, I'm doing the same technique, just a lot smaller and a little less detailed on the front hands. And then once you're done with the tops of the feet, we're going to put them in the oven for a third and final time. Again, the temperature is going to be 275 Fahrenheit, and then you're going to put them in for probably another 30, maybe 40 minutes, just to make sure everything is good. And then once all of your clay pieces are done baking and have cooled to touch, we can start on the painting. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with the painting is we need to primer everything a nice green color. I'm going to try and do my best to match the color of the fur, but I do know that the color of the fur is really dark, and I don't want to make my clay pieces super dark because you're not going to see all the detail. So I am going to probably go a little lighter and a little bit more on the green tint side than the olive green tint side, if that makes any sense. Now I've said this before about green and the color yellow, that these colors don't like applying to surfaces, so you are going to have to do a few coats of this before you have a nice even surface. So I'm probably going to have to do 2 to 3 coats to get my green nice and good. Okay, all of my clay pieces have dried from the original green coat, and we can start adding the detail to it. Okay, so I'm going to start on adding the details to the hands and feet first. Now how I want to do the scales is I want the cracks to be nice and dark and the tops of the scales to be nice and bright. So I'm going to start adding some brighter and brighter greens to the tops of the scales and start blending everything together. This is probably going to be a few different coats, and I might even add some yellow to brighten everything up even more. For the bottoms of the feet, I'm going to use a brown color, and I'm going to use that as a highlight, and I'm just going to blend it into the dark green. Lastly, I want to add a little bit of a white highlight to the scales on the top of the feet. We're not going to do all of the scales, just a few of them, kind of to make it look like they're a bit shinier than they are. So I'm just going to go along the edges and create a nice little line of white. Now the sides of the face, I'm not going to brighten up too much. I'm just going to add a little bit of a greener tint to it. And then the top of the face, because it has all that scaling detail and it has the horns as well, I want to really brighten it up and add a lot of detail to it to kind of draw your attention to it. Because I really like how it looks, and I think it'd be really cool to have a lot of colors there. I decided that I wanted the horns to be a bit of a brown color, kind of matching a bit of what the under parts of the feet look like, just so everything kind of ties together. I'm also going to add a bit of yellow to it to kind of brighten up that brown and kind of have it blend into the green. And then the eyes, I'm just going to paint them a simple black color. They're very tiny, so you don't have to add a lot of detail to these types of eyes unless you really want to, but it really isn't necessary unless the eyes are a little bit bigger. And then lastly, just like the scales on the feet, I'm going to add a bit of a white highlight to the scales on the face. I'm going to let all of this dry, and then I'm going to apply a thin layer of resin over everything to help protect the paint. So this is going to have to dry overnight before we can start putting everything together. Okay, it's the following day and we have everything ready to put together. We got the clay pieces done, we got the sewing done, and now we just need to mush everything together so we have a final piece. So I'm going to use some E6000 glue, and I'm going to go around the base of the foot where we're going to connect the fabric. Once I have glue all the way around the base of the foot, I'm going to push the foot into place, and then I'm going to press the fabric into the glue, making sure to go all the way around the foot. I'm going to do this to both of the feet and the hands, and then I'm going to let everything dry a little bit, and then I'm going to stuff the rest of the body. Once the legs are fully dried and you've stuffed the body, we're going to move on to attaching the head next. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use the same E6000 glue, go all the way around the edge of it, and then we're going to push the head into place and press the fabric into the glue. We're then going to set this aside for a few hours, and then our piece is done once that glue has dried. Okay guys, and that's how I did a baby Carno. I had so much fun. He's going to be in my Etsy shop, so make sure to check the links down below for that if you want to buy him. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!